Good afternoon. I'm Conrad Collaco. Thanks for joining our discussion about bullying in Hamilton schools. I'm here with Dr. Jean Clinton, professor at the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioural Neurosciences in the Division of Child Psychiatry at McMaster. Hello, Jean.
Hi. Hi, Conrad.
And hello to Brenda Flaherty, former Executive Vice President at Hamilton Health Sciences, professor at McMaster University's School of Nursing, former chair of the Board of Directors at YMCA Canada. Now, when I talked to you before we sat down, you both preferred to be introduced as parents. Parents of 3, Brenda, and a parent of 5.
That's right.
And I suppose when it comes to bullying, that's how we relate first and foremost to this issue.
Absolutely. I still remember my daughter being bullied in grade 7 and 8.
Yeah, well,
it's a searing memory.
Yeah.
I get that.
Well, that's an experience we share then. My daughter's in grade 7, has had her own bullying experiences. Now, I should also mention that you are 2/3 of the Hamilton Wentworth District School Board's bullying review panel. Right. And you'll hold your first public feedback session later today at Westmount Secondary School at 6 p.m. and the public is welcome to attend. So it's a review taking place in part due to the death in October of Devon Selvey, the 14-year-old boy who was killed near his Hamilton High School. And let's begin with what you expect to see tonight. What would you like to see from and hear from the people in attendance who've come to talk to you about their experiences with bullying?
Well, we absolutely want to hear from, first and foremost, I think, students and their families as to what their experiences are. And as we know, bullying is about relationships. So we want to view their experiences as moving forward in a healthy way. So we really will value the family and the students' opinions about how we can make it a better and healthier environment for kids to learn.
Absolutely. I think I'm expecting that we're going to hear a fair amount of frustration, Conrad. That the experience that our role is to be listeners, to listen to that frustration, and from that, hopefully engage with the parents and the students, that they come up with some ideas that will be helpful for us, for recommendations to do something about that frustration.
Well, before we invited you on, we asked people in the community through social media to provide responses on how do we solve this problem of bullying in Hamilton. We heard a lot of frustration, probably had about 40 comments, 50 comments, and we'll bring some of those into the conversation here. Also, if you're watching us on social media, you can send your comments in reaction to whatever it is our panelists say. You can let us know, and we'll direct the comments and questions to Brenda and Jean. So before we start with some of the feedback we're getting from the public, maybe we should get a sense of what exactly bullying is. How do you define it?
Right, so we will be sharing with people in the sessions and online a series of slides. But the definition that's used by the Ministry of Education and the board really is talking about bullying is an aggressive and repeated action that is meant to hurt. That's experienced as hurt by the other. It is also a power imbalance, that someone is exerting their power over someone else, whether it's power because of race, because of sex, because of a whole range. It is at its heart, as Brenda has said, it's a relationship. It's a relational issue. And for us, really, what we're learning from the experts is this bullying issue needs to be viewed through the lens, and the solution through the lens of how do we look at what's happening in terms of relationships, not only at the one-on-one, but systemically, what is being affected because of the relationships.
Right. Okay. So I talked with an educator who I let know I was going to have this conversation with you, and what she told me is these kind of systems that provide recommendations around this word bullying can be difficult because bullying is a catch-all phrase with its roots in a whole bunch of different things like racism or sexism. You mentioned a power imbalances in all sorts of different areas. So how do you establish a system? And it's got to be a lot easier for a principal or a teacher to use that phrase bullying when phrases like racism or sexism or homophobia can be more difficult to use and difficult to identify. So how do you establish systems to address the potential root causes of bullying?
Yeah. Maybe I'll start. Well, I think a huge part of the system is about education and professional development, which of course would happen on a very regular basis. It wouldn't be once a year. But most of all, it is daily. And I believe the system relies on leadership and values and culture. And those three are very important as we look at changing the environment for our students in regards to bullying. It's values, it's culture, and it's leadership. And I think everyone has an accountability for bullying.
Yeah, and so looking at that, it means that we need to be listening very carefully, we need to be reviewing very carefully. At the heart of the matter is, are the schools creating safe, inclusive environments for learning? That's, that's the business of schooling. And so as we are thinking about leadership, as we're thinking about the culture, we're really going to be asking some tough questions. There's some good policy and procedure in place, looks good on paper. Tell me why we're still having this frustration with parents and children. So we're not just going to skim nicely on the surface.
Yeah.
Our intention, our hope is very much that we look deeply to see why are so many people frustrated when we have so many good people working very, very hard in a system. Where's that tension? How do we understand it? And how can we make meaningful recommendations to see change happen?
Well,
and that deep dive is about moving forward and in a healthy way, and not about blame. I think, as Jean said, we really have to listen to understand what are the supports and the barriers that need to be removed. Excuse me.
Well, that is a challenging task. If what you have to do is change the perceptions of teachers who in some cases may not see the bullying or see the root cause, you're tasked, I guess, with coming up with a system that gets to those teachers and delivers what? A better ability to identify bullying when it happens?
Yeah, so from a couple of things that we've learned, one is that students that we've been talking to have had this aha moment of, wow, when you look at the definition of bullying like this, we didn't recognize that we were bullying somebody else. So I think that's one. I think likely we're going to find that the same is true of teachers, that what they saw was just teasing or some conflict that had looked like it had resolved had actually gone underground, so they're unaware. So I think what the board is doing is looking at how can they make the environment for the students feel safer, and so they're investing a lot of time in emotion coaching. So when you look at emotion coaching, it's recognizing and validating the feeling of others. Well, you know what? To start, you have to have a heightened awareness of what are the feelings of others. So we're seeing a shift in education that is saying education's not just about academic achievement, it's also about being good at life and being safe in school.
I want to go to a comment from Facebook. This comes from Rob K. He says, bullying happens inside Hamilton schools, but it also occurs online by some of the same people. I can't imagine how much of this terrible bullying happens on social media. Facebook and Twitter need to step up and take responsibility. Well, they're not part of this panel, but have you seen, from your experience, has social media made bullying easier to carry out?
So some of the statistics I've seen is that 42% of kids, so a huge percentage of kids, say that they've experienced cyberbullying, and 60% of kids say that they've seen it happen. I just read this recently. So what's different, and you know, people say this all the time, but what's different now is that this bullying used to happen predominantly face to face. You went home, it was done, or you went to wherever you went to after school, and it was done. Now it can happen 24/7. So not only are our kids experiencing it in a very high degree, but they are never free from it. So I'm not sure what the solution is in terms of Facebook and other things, but I think one of the responsibilities we have as caring adults is to educate so that kids become more caring, and to have kids know to turn to the adults to help and see what can we do about it. So they're learning about the etiquette around this, but we need to go more deeply and ask the kids, help us figure out what are some of the solutions.
And maybe I'll pick up on that as part of our process is to have a survey to all stakeholders. And we've understood from other experiences is that's where we're going to get some of our very rich information when we have our electronic survey, because it will be anonymous, and that will be part of our process.
So this comment comes in from Chris Mason on Twitter. Reports of bullying continue to get ignored. It isn't changing despite everything that has happened recently. It's disappointing. So this reflects some of the frustration that we talked about earlier. So you've got an opportunity this evening and throughout your series of engagement sessions to speak directly to parents and other community members, students as well. So what message do you have for parents, students, everyone else who might not have faith that your recommendations will be either reflective of the feedback that you're given or implemented by the school board?
Well, I think when you need a change, you need to really understand why the change, like the why. And I think all of the community would agree that we need to change, but we need to hear from them, like what happened? Tell us your experience, because sometimes you need to understand what are some of the root causes of having to make a change. And so we very much want to hear from all the stakeholders, the teachers, the parents, the kids, because there will be many different solutions based on some of the barriers. So that's what we really want them to know is we need to hear, because they're going to help us form the recommendations for change. And we absolutely know that the school board is very committed to hearing our interim recommendations in May, and we've got our final report in September. So we need to hear from our community.
Yeah, I think the other maybe question behind your question, Conrad, is is there something that we can do to make sure this is not a report that goes on a shelf and just gathers dust? And so there is always a risk of that. But as Brenda has said, in our we're three completely separate from the school board, people who have come together with a passion around creating safe communities for kids and families. And so we're going to bring that credibility, we're going to bring that visibility. We're doing 20 sessions that are facilitated by experts, and it's going to be kind of hard. But more importantly, our relationship with the administration is one that has made it crystal clear to me this is a top priority. It's not going to get shoved under the carpet, and there is an honest appraisal that change is required. So we're going to be saying, here's what our recommendations are, and let's see by this time what's happened around the recommendations.
Well, I'm sure a lot of parents and students are very hopeful that that's exactly what's going to take place.
And I think, as Jean said earlier, is our students can't learn. They can't learn if they are in an environment where they do not feel supported and are not safe. So as a community, we need to work together to find solutions.
So last question, if this is going to work, what does success look like? In a year from now or 2 years from now, how are we going to know that these recommendations were implemented and successful? How do we measure this?
Well, luckily, we have, particularly in Hamilton, we've got some really great tools, survey tools that we can utilize. So we can look at what right now is a report from the students, both from a school climate survey as well as from a middle development instrument that is done by the school board that talks about safety, that talks about bullying, talks about caring adults. So we can absolutely say, here's baseline, and has it changed? Has it moved? So that's not adding another burden onto the school board. That's looking at what they're already collecting and saying, are we actually making a difference? So that's one of the ways that we're going to be able to measure, has there been change? I think what we will long to see is that students are coming to school and they feel safe. They feel heard, they have a sense of belonging there. And that's going to take a lot through change system and thinking about that. That will be success to me.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. You've got a lot of hard work that I think a lot of people are counting on the two of you to be successful. So congratulations on taking it on and best of luck.
Right, thank you very much, Conrad. We're very honored to have been asked to do this.
Yes, thank you, Conrad. And as you mentioned, there is a third member of our panel,
Yes.
and that's Dr. Gary Warner. And looking forward to working with my colleagues and hopefully producing a report that will see change.
All right, that's all for today. Thanks for being a part of all of this. Thanks to you who asked questions, made comments, and who are cheering on the work of our two panelists and their third colleague. They will, once again, be holding their first public feedback session this evening at Westmount Secondary School in Hamilton at 6 p.m. Tomorrow we'll have up a story that will include a list or a link to a list of all the other 19 sessions that will take place. So thanks very much.
Right, thank
Thanks,
you.
Conrad.
That's great, thank you.